look forward to a productive discussion. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to our two special guests for today who will introduce themselves and take us through the next two segments. Thank you. Over to you, speakers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be a gentleman. I'll let the lady introduce herself. Let me come in after her. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vanessa. I'm dialing in from Kigali, and I'm the Acting Regional Director for Southern Africa. It's a pleasure to be with everyone here, and I look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
And good afternoon, everyone. This is Morgan Chishala from Lusaka, Zambia. I'm head of IT at the Zambia National Clearing, Zambia Electronic Clearing House, which runs the National Financial Switch. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. So I guess this is where I proceed. Jacqueline, or is it Vanessa?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll try to take you through a dive into the National Financial Switch. The National Financial Switch is the platform that we have set up as part of our improvements in the journeys on our payments ecosystem. And with the moderation as guided, I think we will get the questions at the end of the session. So as I earlier indicated, my name is Morgan Chishala, and I'm with the Zambia Electronic Clearing House. There has to be that distinction because at times people think the Zambia National Financial Switch is a company when in fact it's an infrastructure that is run by the National Zambia Electronic Clearing House, which is the ACH for Zambia. If we can just go to the next slide so that we can look at the structure for the presentation. Thank you. So I will try to take you through a background of who we are as the Zambia Electronic Clearing House. And I'll try to tell you also why we needed the National Financial Switch, the stakeholders that we had on the project. We'll look at the objectives because it is critical for us to understand and to appreciate why and what we were looking for when setting up the infrastructure. We'll dive into some of the services that we offer as an institution on this facility. And then we'll get into the journey. This is where I think the whole meat of the discussion falls under. We'll look at how we implemented the National Financial Switch, the challenges that we had and the victories that we had on the platform, the lessons that we came out with and still continue to look at. And then lastly, we'll just try to look through what else we're adding as value adds to ensure we remain relevant as a payment processor that is dealing with domestic transactions within the country. So to get started, about ZECHL. ZECHL is a single interbank clearing facility, okay? We were an institution that has about 40 members of staff. This comprises of our CEO, the management team, and we have a group of administrators and officers who ensure that we can continue to manage the facilities that we run. We have two operational centers in the country, one in Lusaka and the other on the Copper Belt. And within ZECHL are 5 functional units. These are basically the units that assist us in our day-to-day running of the institution. And we are the only automated, we have one automated and centralized dispute management solution. I think all this will come to add up when I come to speak to what it is that we are offering and most of the issues around that space. And within our product portfolio, we have about 5 payment streams. We offer the EFTs, that's the electronic funds transfers, the check image clearing. That together, these two together form what we call our check truncation system. For those of you that have been having check processing and EFTs combined. And then on the National Financial Switch, which is the second core system on our platforms, we have the ATM, POS, and e-money streams. And this is basically what we'll be looking into. So who we are, if we are to dive in deep on the next slide, We are a not-for-making profit organization, and we were established in 1999. Our vision is basically to be the center of excellence and innovation of payment services within the country. Our mission is to provide an efficient, reliable, and value-driven payment system. And within our values, we look at innovation, we look at trust, we look at inclusiveness, and we look at excellence. And these values have actually helped us to promulgate and to ensure that we offer a service that becomes of quite a huge relevance and getting the appetite from the industry. I believe when I talk about some of the achievements that we have had, the values will clearly speak into it. And this also repositions us into the visions and what we set up. So we are licensed and regulated by the Bank of Zambia. And this is in line with our National Payment Systems Act, which was let out in 2007. As I indicated, we do not have a peer. We are the single interbank clearing facility for the nation. And within the membership structure or the participation structure, we've got commercial banks, we've got non-bank financial institutions, we've got MNOs or telcos, and we've got various other designated PSPs, those that are designated through the central bank. We manage and oversee the scheme rules, the standards and the industry procedures. That is for those systems that all members connect to through us. So we collaboratively and consultatively get them engaged to get all these designed, developed, released, reviewed, and so on. Within the governance, we are 50% owned by the central bank, that is the Bank of Zambia, and the other 50% is through shares to commercial banks. At present, we've got about 43 participants on our platform. We have certifications as well. These certifications are just certifications to ensure that we remain relevant to the changing needs. We're PCI DSS compliant. I think as of July last month, we attained the version 4 of the PCI DSS for those of you that are technical and understand these things. We subscribe to the ISO 27001 for our information systems, and we are fully certified as of March this year under the ISO 22301 on the business continuity management system. The role we play in the ecosystem, on the next slide, is basically we are at the fulcrum of the small value payment system. We've got a high value payment system, and we also have a low value, and we operate within the low value space. And within our setup, we are interconnected to commercial banks, like I said. We are connected through to the central bank. We have our mobile money operators, the non-bank financial institutions. We've got other fintechs, PSPs, and quasi-government institutions that are also eligible to connect to us should they note that there's a service that they would want to derive from our unique positioning within the payments ecosystem. So our membership is broad and all-inclusive. We are not restricted as to whom we should incorporate, as long as the regulators do designate such a participant and they clear that participant for participation in the ecosystem. We come in, perform integration for that participant, and advise all the other parties to onboard that participant as a new player on the market. And that new player also has an equal voice when we have those industry meetings to review and revise a number of procedures, policies, standard operating procedures, as well as the rules when we are getting them designed, or as and when there's any matter that requires consensus and we call upon all the members. So that is how basically we are structured as an institution, and this is basically how we move. So moving on to the national financial switch. Why did we need the national financial switch? Basically, I'm sure that's the question that is key. Anytime you're setting up an infrastructure of this nature, there is need that you address a specific business need. And when I say specific, I understand that Africa has its own unique problems. But within the context of a country, you will find that you can actually drill down as to the specifics on the challenges the country is encountering. So for us, there were two major drivers to getting the national switch in play. And the first one was that at the time, Bank of Zambia was trying to bring in some improvements and modernization in the payments ecosystem, or should I say the payment systems infrastructure. And part of that development looked at us having an infrastructure that would be common for all participants to hook into and get their services delivered efficiently, securely, and with the right rails to get those issues we were having locally addressed. The second issue and the second driver for the national switch was that we had a lot of limited interoperability, and there were systems that were not talking to each other. Every network had its own clients, and at the end of the day, there was a bit of confusion. So where, for instance, if we're looking at the telcos, you'd find if a subscriber has a certain USSD code to access a certain facility, when the same subscriber goes to the other network to try and access that facility, you'd find there would be differences in standards, differences in interfaces, differences in interpretation, and that really wasn't working out well. We knew that we had to address a common problem, and so a common solution for everyone is what birthed the idea for the national switch. So our goal was basically to get a project in place to realize a single platform for all payment service financial providers to deliver cost-effective, reliable, and secure financial services. And that was firstly for domestic transaction, and then later on for regional transactions, because at the time of setting up the switch, we had a lot of remittances happening, but there was no platform to really capture and handle most of these. On the expected outcomes, I've spoken to interoperability. This was key. We also needed to come up with some form of standardization to ensure that what I experience on network one is the same feel I have as a customer on network two. The standards that apply with regards to the regulation for participant one apply for participant two. So commercial banks, non-commercial banks, different PSPs, and so on. Now, with the interoperability and standardization, we believe that this would now promote some form of efficiency in that we'll be getting a real-time payment system through, and everyone was expected to set up the system in a certain manner to achieve the instant nature of the platform, the security requirements of the platform, as well as to ensure that everything that goes around, including the issues of dispute resolution, are all handled centrally. And this then would realize that efficiency aspect of what should be in an instant payment solution. Now, the shared platform also was an expected benefit in that we didn't expect those players who did not have the initial capital outlay to now ride on this infrastructure that is already set up. And this would be a quick win for them, as their go-to market would become quite easy, and we wouldn't have to wait for them to set up their own budgets and their own capital expenditure procurements and so on to get themselves ready for integration. We also wanted to ensure that when we lay this common platform, innovation would now come around the platform, and this would somehow kill the competition and allow for collaboration. So where, for instance, fintechs were not part of this when the project was being mooted, we now have a space for fintechs to come in and say, look, I can be on the delivery side, or I can be a technology partner for this participant who connects directly. So we had direct and indirect participants, and we also had local Zambian companies now pop up because they realized the need for them to provide maybe an aggregation service or just a service to be a technology provider, and thereby also take part in what was happening on this new platform, which was a big plus. And then lastly, the issue of cash needed to be addressed and still needs to be addressed. We know cash can never go away in one day, and cash is still king in most of these places we go to transact. But at the end of the day, we wanted to ensure that we could bring as much money as possible into the system, and thereby also improving on our economic position and improve on as many players as would eventually become economic actors at the end of the day, just through the provision of one innovation, which was central to all financial services, both domestically and then at a regional space. The journey of the National Financial Switch. We started this project when we issued the tender in 2014. It was an open tender because we didn't want to limit ourselves to one or two players. It's important that when you're setting up an infrastructure as this, and it was the first time for us, we had never implemented such a system at such a scale. And because of its complexity, we needed to ensure that we get the right partner and get started with the right footing and get it right first time. So we opened up the tender and we awarded the contract a year later. This was after due diligence and following through the tender process. The implementation started in earnest in about 2016 till about 2018. It would look like it was a long process, but what we learned along the way was that it was necessary for us to take this time. And the reason this was so was because a lot of things began to pop up that we needed to address. If we had not been addressing them as they were coming along, it was going to somewhat affect our rollout, or we would not have had that quality of a rollout. So it took us a bit of time. And I will speak to this when I come to look at the lessons learned, I think in a little bit more detail. Now, the exciting time came for us in 2018. And in 2018, what we were able to achieve was the ATM switching. You know, between 2016 and 2018, our vendor was building the whole system based on the specification we provided. And we said, okay, if we are to approach this project correctly, we wanted to start with the card transactions, meaning ATM and POS going live together. But when we looked at the dynamics involved and just how the setup of the system was based on what was happening, we decided to split that into two. So the ATM rollout became phase one, and the POS rollout became phase two, and phase three covered our e-money rollout. So in 2018, we went live on ATM. 2019, we went live on the POS, and in 2020, we went live on the e-money. Between the ATM and the POS go live, we were informed that there was a need for us to be PCI DSS compliant. And this was because at the time of rollout, we had Visa and MasterCard issued cards, which were taking up about 95% of the market of the issued cards. So there was a need that we comply to the standard as requested through our partners, and we undertook the journey to be PCI DSS compliant, which we did attain in 2019. We were given a window within which to comply, or else they would shut us off, and this is what we achieved within 2019. In 2021, having run the project an extra year after the e-money go live, and confirming that we were now stable to start looking at all those go live issues and implementation issues, we declared the project closed. And from 2021 to date, or should I say from 2018 to date, we have not gone down on the system. We've always been available for our participants for domestic switching, and we remain a viable partner for the cross-border arrangements. From within 2022, we embarked on ensuring we were a partner to look out for. And as such, we went on with the ISO 27001, and we continue remaining compliant to this date. As I indicated, a facility of this nature requires that you take your business continuity quite seriously. And so we set up to achieve the ISO 22301 certification. And we did achieve this within a year of commencing the project. And we have been assessed twice And in both assessments, we have been recertified as a BCMS 22301 partner. And as of July, just last month, we took a brave step to just go on to the PCI DSS version 4 certification, which we were certified. And this is a fresh one. We're actually holding a celebration for this one because not so many players have gone out to go and get the version 4 certification. We are one of the very first, probably in the region. We should be the first. I'm yet to get that corrected, but I know that we are one of the very first to be certified on PCI DSS version 4. And to just ensure, like I indicated, we remain a bit relevant, we are undertaking some projects which will see us start acquiring and processing QR codes. We're setting up a shared agency banking. And then we're also setting up a centralized eKYC platform just to see how we can have this onboarding requirement centralized and how we can be carrying out some user verifications and validations as our various customers out there are accessing financial services from the agents, from the commercial banks, and from all the other PSPs that we have set up. Our achievements, I think I've spoken to them. I will not get into detail, but I'll just speak to 3 on the next slide. We have achieved over 400 million transactions within the 2 platforms that we are offering. But specifically on the instant payment system, we have about 200 million plus transactions from 2018 to date. I think our average transactions come to about 12 to 13 million every month. We are still growing, but so far so good. We have a 24/7 support. We pride in this because we realize that if we structured our support in 24/7, it actually helps us to achieve that efficiency factor we have in our vision and in our mission statement. And from the time that we were set up, we've onboarded about 40 plus participants. All the commercial banks, all the telcos are members on our platform. And we've got 24 FSPs. These are the different designated financial service players within the country. And from the time we went live on the infrastructure in 2018, we haven't had any cybersecurity attack, mostly because we are trying to ensure that we remain active and actively monitoring on the frauds around. And we continue to ensure, even at the human level, we've got a lot of training happening and so on. So these are some of the achievements that we've had. And yes, we are one of the few designated or instant and immediate payment switches around. And I'm sure this is why we were able to get a seat on this platform to just share our story and see who else can join us on this journey as we get our clients serviced. So on the implementation, the slide which is now showing, we had different silos. So the commercial banks had their own networks, and you'd find that maybe this would be set up not only for all the commercial banks, but it would be for that commercial bank and its customers. So all these were in-house solutions, and we didn't have anything crossover. So our initial step was to ensure that all the ATMs in the country would handshake, meaning I could go with my Visa card on any ATM within the country, and that transaction will be processed domestically. The next was on the POS. I would try to make sure that anytime I go to any POS on any merchant, I would get my card, irrespective of which brand it's carrying, is accepted, and the transaction is successfully processed right through to the end. So we broke down the phase 1, what we were calling the phase 1, where we had the card transactions fully routing on our platform, and we had stability on this platform. We didn't wait for stability before bringing in the phase 2. The phase 2 participants are now the MNOs, the mobile money or mobile network operators. And these operators had a totally different system. Remember, even on the regulation, their KYC is different. Their regulators, their regulations and regulatory requirements are also minimal. Their collateral requirements are different. So the whole space was very, very new. And for the very first time, we needed to see how we could have interchange take place between a commercial bank and an MNO or a telco. And this was a very difficult thing for us to achieve, but we did start somewhere, and we have continued to refine the process to a point where parties can now transact together and ensure that we keep this momentum of running the switch, of participating on the switch, and just ensuring that our customers enjoy the delivery through mobile payments. Together, we came up with a national switch, which now has those PSPs, the non-banks, the MNOs, and so on. Now, what challenges did we face at the point of setting up the switch? On the next slide. Number one, we had a lot of participants. So just aligning the participants was an issue. Um, some would come in and say we have competing projects, and where our main offices are situated, our portfolio for and our strategy for the next 3 years didn't include the national switch. So this becomes a bit of a challenge for us to get buy-in. Others would come in and say we cannot provide the resources as required because the national switch is a side project. I also have my own switch, which I'm serving my clients on. The project was complex that I'm saying. It was a first time implementation. We went with the ISO 8583 interface, and for most of our local partners, this became a challenge. They needed to find a suitable partner to get the interface done in the ISO 8583. And at times understanding and getting that specification documentation correctly interpreted was an issue. We also had a number of players who had different systems. So some had legacy systems they needed to upgrade. So we needed to wait for some of them to get to a certain level. Some of them also wanted to look at the different markets altogether, and them fitting in fully to what Zambia was demanding. We couldn't really get that alignment. The commercials, like I indicated, we didn't have a place where we could reference for interchange between a telco and a bank. Who gets what percentage? Is it the issuer that gets the higher or the acquirer? And so on. The dispute resolution, again, we wanted to streamline on the actual timelines. For Visa and MasterCard dispute resolutions, which were in excess of 40 days for some, we needed to align that so that both mobile money transactions, which were very minimal in some instances, a dollar doesn't really take, we don't want a dollar to take 20 days to resolve. So all that was a bit of a challenge to harmonize. And then lastly, there was regulation. In some instances, we didn't have the full regulation in place. At times, it wasn't really clear. And then at times, it wasn't just there. So there was need that we also get in place some we were making. But secondly, that didn't open us up to a monster we would not be able to manage when the switch was fully operational. So all these came in as presented themselves as challenges, but we overcame them through stakeholder engagements. We resolved these through the involvement of our central bank, which was quite instrumental in helping us in a line. For instance, if we looked at a certain activity as being critical, we would provide an end date for everyone to comply, and the central bank would issue a directive for compliance, and any non-compliance would attract a penalty. So that in itself made our participants to get moving with the project team and ensuring that we were meeting our milestones as projected. And then lastly, we also engaged our stakeholders on a one-on-one, and also through the associations we have, like the Bankers Association. This was just to ensure that we broke the competition barrier. We broke the barrier which puts one member feeling it is more of eligible to be in the space and close out others. We tried to break all those through one-on-one engagements, and at that point we began to show the picture as a win-win for everyone, and that this was a huge cake for us to all benefit from. And that in itself actually helped us a lot in just getting all these participants aligned. Now, quickly in the next 5 minutes, let's try to just zero in on the lessons that we learned, because I think this is quite key for us. What are some of the lessons that we learned? So firstly, we did learn that PPP works. Okay, this is where the private and the public sector get together to run a project. It was critical for us. We did learn that increasing interoperability is a win for all. We did learn that small wins in the phased approach gives us the stability and the progress that you need, because you don't want to come back and start fixing things every time. So you take in small chunks, deal with them and run with the next activities and so on. And we did actually appreciate that a consultative approach gives everyone that appreciation to say their voice can be heard, their comments can be taken on, and it actually made them want to be a part of most of everything else that we wanted to do. So for those that would want to set up a switch, for instance, start with what you have, okay? Do not look for something that is too perfect. Do not look for something that is well known out there. Start with what you have. We had Visa and MasterCards, we had ATMs, we had postcards. We said, look, we don't have a domestic card, we don't have our own issued cards. We'll ride on what is existing, we'll look at the infrastructure that is there, and we'll begin from there with interoperability, increased services, innovation, and so on. Secondly, try to be as simple as you possibly can, meaning that do not go for something that is too far off. Peer reviews are important. What is our neighboring country doing? Or what are other countries that are running a national facility as ours doing? As you're running with these simple things, always keep the bigger picture in mind, okay? Which is, for us, it was the customer experience as well as our financial inclusion agenda. Right from the onset, we said we're engaging all parties, and this is what helped us a lot. So make sure you don't leave any key stakeholder. We are all relevant at the end of the day, and our input speaks much when we have those rollout sessions and all. When designing the system, it's important to design for failures as well. We are sitting in a part of the world where we still have issues with our digital public infrastructure when it comes to roads, when it comes to connectivity, when it comes to power, when it comes to accessibility with the access points. So when you're designing your system, think of what would happen where facility X is not in place, and try to ensure that that is factored in at design. And by the time you're going live, most of those should be at least 70-80% of usability, just to ensure that the customer experience is not really affected. And do not assume a smooth ride. There will be craters, there will be potholes, there will be fights along the way. You might rub some friction with some partners, even regulators, but it is key that if you had engaged them from the start, everyone will look to appreciate why certain things are happening, and collaboratively you will address all the issues. The issue of training, I think, is something that cannot be overemphasized. It is critical that we are people that are constantly being trained, because payment systems are dynamic. The needs of users out there are dynamic. What is shining and king today might not be needed tomorrow. So it is important that as we add value adds to the system, as we continue operating, we continue training our people. Security must never be omitted. Right from the design, consider the trust that comes with a secure infrastructure, because that is what will make you have the volumes. When your end users trust your platform, they will be okay to use it, and they will appreciate anything that you are running within that infrastructure, because you have given them that. Innovation, as I've just spoken to, is something we cannot let go of. On the leveraging on existing infrastructure and regulation for your rails, this becomes important. Don't throw away what you have if there is any component that can be reused. If what is required is an upgrade, perform the upgrade up until you can get these things done. On the point of strategic alliances, ensure that where you know you're not able to walk alone, like we did, we went out for a tender and we got FIS as a partner. I think I will not be crucified for mentioning them because they've been a credible partner and we've worked well together. And they gave us a system that up to now we are still utilizing, and we're quite happy with what we have. SLAs are in place. We've got teams that are identified and so on. And then at the end of the day, what is important for us to understand is that it is possible. We need to start believing in ourselves, and just to believe that when we lift one leg, when we put it down, we will land on firm ground and we'll be comfortable to get up and continue moving. So these lessons in themselves have given not only us as ZECHL that appreciation that we are able to manage a facility with such number of participants and complexity, but it has also given us that confidence to try out the next big thing, and it keeps that excitement moving. On our future developments, sorry, I'll have to run to that slide now. We have the national QR code, which we are running with. It's a project that this is in flight mode right now. The national QR code, the shared agent banking, the business intelligence and analytics, these are projects that are currently in flight, including the regional integration. And this is why you are seeing that 2024 as the rollout or possible rollout. We have noted the number of our merchants are accepting QR payments, so we want to get into that space. The shared agency banking for us, we are setting up white label agents, meaning that we're increasing on the access points for our customers. We can go to one agent and perform services like with my own agents from my commercial bank. On the business intelligence, we are sitting on a lot of data, and we believe that if we provided a managed service for our participants, they can connect into the platform, perform predictive analysis on their data, get some trends understood, and just get reports as they would want. And then we would also be in a position to understand how our instant payment solution is faring within the country. We also noticed that, like I indicated, the onboarding process for access into financial services sometimes is hindered because our customers are requested to provide the same information for every service they require. So we are setting up a centralized eKYC, and this is just to assist our partners also in a better way of ensuring that the information about the market and those customers that have accessed services is in a central location, and we can verify all those that would want to access financial services and open it up to quasi-government and other institutions that would want to perform verifications, validations before they offer their service to the same customers at the end of the day. We are also considering a domestic card, but timelines are yet to be agreed as this is still in discussion. With regards to regional integration, like I indicated, we are right now almost done with the TCIB on BankServe. So we'll open up that channel into markets across through South Africa. And we are also getting into POPs and the commercial switch. These are projects that have already started at initial phases. Some are within agreement signing and others are technical integration. And lastly, we realized that one of the challenges we had was the ISO 8583 for the telcos, because I think they are more into these younger fintechs who do not have much understanding on the ISO 8583. So we'd want to split that interface and allow all the mobile money operators to interface to us through API. This is also something that is in flight. And within 2024 and 2025, we should be able to open up and just allow for that form of an integration. I think with that said, I hand over to Vanessa. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Morgan, for this excellent presentation. I think ZECHL has done amazing. There are a lot of valuable lessons here. Interestingly, we're observing that some of these challenges that you've highlighted, stakeholder engagement and alignment, technology gaps, and commercial considerations are common across different markets. So there's a lot of shared context that we can all learn from. There's a lot of questions that have come in, so I will try to just quickly go into them. I've categorized the different questions, and I'll start with those that touch on participation. The first question was, how's the competition between fintechs, electronic money providers like telcos and banks for the shared platform? Another question under participation and onboarding was, are banks and telcos mandated to use the financial switch, or is it optional? And then finally, I think this other question, more related to the previous ones, is how is the participation of the non-financial institutions in Zambia with regards to their eligibility for connectivity to the platform? So if you could quickly just collectively address those and very briefly so that we can try to cover as many questions. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you. So I'll start with the first question for fintechs and telcos. So what we have done is we have provided the requirements for participation, and if any fintech or if any telco meets those, they are open up. They only get designation from the central bank, who does the due process on them, the due diligence, and they become participants on the platform. We have direct and indirect participants, okay? When I say direct and indirect participants, some fintechs do choose to be technology partners for some of the non-bank financial institutions, and for some, even the commercial banks. So they go out there and form their own networks, but come to us as one player, and we then allow them to also participate in that regard. If a fintech, for instance, today wants to issue a wallet, they are free to do that. Once the central bank designates them, we connect them directly to our platform and they begin to operate. On the mandate, all the commercial banks, all the payment service providers in country that will have a product that is customer service, facing, will get the designation from central bank, and they will meet all those onboarding requirements, beginning with them writing to us expressing a desire to come on board. With regards to participation, like I said, participation on the national financial switch and on the services we offer is direct. The only challenge that comes in on the Zambian space is that our TGS, that is the real-time gross settlement system at central bank, where settlement happens, only has accounts for commercial banks currently. There is a process to review. So where a non-bank financial institution will require that settlement leg sorted out, they will connect to us directly, but they will be sponsored for settlement through any of the commercial banks they choose to go and have the settlement agreement signed up with. I think that covers for the three questions. And participation, on the switch, as long as you have a domestic product that requires to be switched between different networks or players, every player is mandated to connect to the national switch. So there is a directive from central bank.
Great, thank you. I think I'll quickly go to the next set of questions, which is more on the technology and regional integration. You spoke to your choice of the payment language or the payment interface language, which was ISO 8583. And there were some questions around, are there any plans for the switch to move to ISO 222? And the second question was regarding some of the more security technologies. FIS has quite developed switching platforms. How come there is no online e-commerce or tokenization supported transactions? Or are they there currently?
Okay, thank you. So yes, we went with the ISO 8583 because remember, part of our lessons was start where you are. So the majority of our participants were on ISO 8583. and on the lower version, but we requested that they all upgrade to the 1997. And we did the integration based on what we had at the time. Now, with the changes in time, we have begun our migration to ISO 222. I think this is something that we cannot run away from. So we've actually started looking at the system's full migration. For now, we started with a small component that feeds into our settlement with the central bank, but all this is happening within a given period that the central bank has provided for the whole industry to get ISO 222 compliant. So we are on that journey right now. With regard to the security on the platform, what we do with regards to our security implementation is we first look at what is applying within the market and around the place. And this is why when we went for certain certifications, we also wanted to ensure that our service provider had their application as a PADSS compliant application. Now, depending on how we set up internally, I couldn't go into all the details. We do have tokenization taking place. We do have heavy investment on our monitoring and as well as on our applications, um, physical infrastructure as well as software implementations on security. I just couldn't go into that detail because we have not executed any NDAs, but suffices to mention that what FIS is able to offer as and when we onboard that rail or that activity, for instance, that requires additional service security, we do ensure that we get that from our service provider, and we do ensure that as much as possible, our participants hooking into our infrastructure also align to a certain level of security. So hardware security modules, for instance, are in place. The applications are speaking to the signing. We have marking happening and so on. All that is part of our design on the infrastructure side. That's as far as I can get into, Vanessa, with regards the technology and security.
Thank you, Morgan. I think in addition to the technology questions, there was also a question on whether all the transactions are routed through the switch, or does it only cover for the offers transactions, so only the interoperable inter-institution transactions?
Yes, we don't handle in-house transactions. We don't see those.
Okay, so it's only the offers transactions.
Offers
Thank you.
transactions.
I think the final set of questions covers, so there's a question on the commercial aspect, and there's also a question on the regional integration with other platforms. And I'll start with the commercial question, which talks about what is the estimated saving, or is there any estimated saving by making all ATM transactions switch locally?
So that's a good question, but it cannot be answered outrightly through one. One thing that we are all aware of is that for any transaction on international payment schemes requires that you pay for certain fees and you do certain reports, and there are those processing fees that apply. But where a transaction is localized, we do not send transactions out. And so there is a saving for those participants that, one, are doing the issuing on the cards, because at the end of the day, anytime their card is accessed or acquired, they do get a cut from it. For those that are also acquiring, because they have deployed the devices, there comes out that aspect of them getting a saving. And this is why we haven't seen a lot of closure on some of these platforms. They still continue to bring in more channels and add on to the numbers, as in scaling up, because they have realized that there is some business value. And for Zambia right now, I think what has really taken us off are the mobile transactions, because we didn't expect them to be at the level at which we are. So right now, you can perform a cash out where a transaction is sent to or initiated through the mobile phone, and the cash out is performed at either an ATM or an agent. That also speaks to some business coming through as a result of some player or partner partner's customer performing transaction, which initially wasn't happening before the switch came in.
Thank you, Morgan. I think that's an excellent use case that we've also seen deployed or in plans for a lot of the countries. So the last question is on regional integration. I think you spoke of plans with TCIB and then PAPS as well. So the question is, how does your international gateway or interconnectivity work with other countries to make interoperability on regional trade transactions?
Okay, so we are just within project phase, like I indicated, where, for instance, a regional partner on the technology side, where we do not have, like a regional partner requires that we are ISO 20022, and we do not have that standard in place, we've set up some plugs, okay? These plugs are just to ensure that we can have those conversions happening. Within the discussions that are ongoing, we've got different groups looking at the technical integration, looking at the legal and the regulatory space, and also looking at the business side of things. And what we hope to achieve when all these projects are finalized is that any currency conversions, if they have to apply, any compliance issues, anti-money laundering requirements are all met within this period when we are carrying out these projects and all. And at the end of the day, once we, for instance, on the technology side, meet our ISO 20022, being the only gateway that is expected to run, then at that point, we can shut down some of these plugs and ensure that we do an end-to-end ISO 20022, meeting all the requirements and the benefits that come with the payloads in those formats that these standards can actually take on. So just to be clear, these are projects currently, and we haven't yet gone live on any of the corridors crossing the border.
Thank you very much, Morgan. I think I'll hand it over to Jackie to close the session. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jackie.
Well, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Vanessa. We have come to the conclusion of today's webinar. I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of you for joining us and making this session a success. We hope you found the case study on NFS to be both informative and thought-provoking. We also appreciate your active participation, so many questions. This is invaluable. It's also part of driving a richer dialogue and helps us explore this topic more comprehensively. Again, a special thank you to Morgan and Vanessa for that insightful presentation and the follow-up moderation of the questions and comments from the audience. I have a feeling that this discussion is to be continued. So please feel free to reach out if you have any more questions and need further information. We're always here to support your understanding and explore this exciting IPS theme together. Before we sign off, I encourage you to stay connected with us for future webinars and updates in this series and beyond. Please also mark your calendars for November 20th, 2024, because we are thrilled to announce the upcoming release of the State of Inclusive Instant Payment Systems, SIIPS, in Africa 2024 report. Very exciting. You won't want to miss it. So keep an eye on our social media channels and website for more details as they come as soon as possible. Thank you once again for your time and participation. We look forward to seeing you at our future convenings. Bye for now and have a great evening. Thank you.